The story of the foundation of Save the Redwoods League is very much tied to the foundation of the National Park Service. And the first director, Stephen Mather, had a vision of a kind of a grand circle of national parks from the Grand Canyon, Sequoia Kings Canyon, up through the Redwoods and onto Crater Lake and ultimately up to Yellowstone. One of the key pieces missing in that link, in that trail, was a redwood park. So this was about 1917, and he contacted 3 scientists he knew and asked them to go and explore the question of the redwoods and see what was going up in the northern redwoods, where the logging was going on, he'd heard, pretty rapidly. And those 3 individuals took what is now essentially the Redwood Highway up to Humboldt County and dropped into the Eel River Basin in what is Humboldt Redwood State Park today, and walked amongst a primeval forest there. And there's letters in our archives about them walking into these groves, literally taking their hats off and talking in kind of hushed voices, just being so moved by what they stood before them. And they resolved at that point that someone had to do something to save the redwoods for future generations, and those someones were going to be them. And they went on to found Save the Redwoods League, that for the last 90 years has been kind of true to that mission of protecting those ancient redwood groves and providing people to walk amongst them as they did back in 1917. In 1927, the first bond act was put before the voters, led by Save the Redwoods League, and secured $6 million for park acquisition that enabled them to go out and protect many of the places that had been identified in that first comprehensive survey. Many of the places in that survey form the jewels of the state park system today: Jedediah Smith, Prairie Creek Redwoods. One of the other stories of the establishment of Redwood National Park is a vigorous debate between, say, the Redwoods League, the Sierra Club and others about where the park should be located. And briefly it boiled down to a debate about whether it should be located in Redwood Creek or in the Mill Creek watershed, which were the lower portions of which were protected by the League in the 20s in Jedediah Smith. If you bridge forward to today, what we have essentially is both of those places are protected. In 2002, we finally had the opportunity to purchase 25,000 acres of what is the Mill Creek and the adjacent Rock Creek watershed to bring those into public ownership. Unfortunately, over the intervening 70 years, essentially all of those upper slopes had been logged. We have about 200 acres of ancient redwood forest left on those lands, and about 24,800 acres of logged land, including a fairly extensive road network. But we have a vision of reweaving the wildness and reweaving the fabric of that landscape, so working very closely with the National Park Service, with State Park Service and others to remove those logging roads, to restore those forests, and to set that watershed on its path to recovery. Now, another area of focus for, say, the Redwoods League at the moment is looking at the coast redwoods and the giant sequoias as indicators of climate change. What sets them apart as a tree, as in addition to their incredible ability to store and sequester carbon, is the fact that they essentially have locked within their rings a 2,000 plus year record of climate change. So we have the ability, by studying these groves that have been protected over the last 90 years in Redwood National Park and elsewhere, to create a fine-grained climate map for past climates in California and use that information to enrich our climate models to make better predictions about what will happen to these forests in the future. The protection work and restoration work of the future really has to be done with an acknowledgement of climate change. We need to be identifying places that we need to focus our protection effort, future corridors that need to be built, and areas where the trees and forests will want to migrate to as the climate changes. And if we're to protect these groves in the future, that's the work that lies ahead. As, say, the Redwoods League's goal is restoring an ancient forest, you need to be thinking about 1,000 years. And that really means that we're doing things today that our children, our children, our children's children are not going to see. It's kind of the ultimate gift to the future, doing something today that people in the distant future will be the beneficiary of. And I feel so grateful today for the work that was done 80, 90 years ago by people I'll never meet and didn't meet, who are long since gone, but who protected some of the places that inspire me.